You are listening to WXRWLP Milwaukee on 104.1 FM and riverwestradio.com on your phone. You can now listen by saying, Alexa, play River West Radio, or Hey Google, play River West Radio on TuneIn. Support for this program comes from Collectivo Coffee, dedicated to keeping Milwaukee's bike riding community rolling with bike pumps available for use in all Collectivo cafes. More info is available in cafes and at collectivocoffee.com. Excellent. Welcome to Cinema Fireside. If you're listening live, it is a dreary night in Milwaukee. Warmer, but a kind of like a constant rain, which is now diminished into maybe some sort of mist. Gabe is just called in. Gabe, thank you so much. We're going to be joining you sooner than later. Gabe Van Handel, always an exciting revelation on this show. And thanks, listeners, for making this show happen, because as long as there's an audience, there'll be a show to some degree in life. I heard that years and years ago. So, yeah, I woke up at 2:30 this morning, realized, I had some situations to think about, realized, well, you're not going back to sleep. I'll just be laying here for like 4 hours straight. This ain't good. But, yeah, time flies, whether you're having fun or not. And here we are, man. And it's going to be good to go home, read just a little bit, and go to sleep. Hey, Rabbi, looking good, man. Rabbi's here. He came in on his bike. And he's wearing fluorescent, great protective gear for this dark night. So, great stuff, man. I'm reading, actually. I read a lot. And the spectrum goes from Ingmar Bergman's screenplay to From the Life of the Marionettes in pristine book form to Sammy Hagar's autobiography. So we revel in the land of music as well. Yeah, it was a heck of a gift. Ingmar Bergman's From the Life of the Marionettes, hardcover, just a treasure. And I read it in by scene. So before I get to work, I'll be sitting there going into that heaven. It's like, this is incredible. And I just finished his book on theater. Actually, he had a theater project that had 3 plays, including an adaptation of Scenes from a Marriage, and also Julie and A Doll's House. I think it was called Doll's House or so by him. Not sure, but read that book, fantastic. Moved on to From the Life of the Marionettes. So great stuff. In fact, actually, there's a few other. Oh, you know what? Lee Vullman. I read one. She has 2 books, memoirs, Choices and Changes. And I was thinking, man, which one did I read? But I have a shelf of books that I read. So I looked in it and said, oh, okay, I read that one. So now we can move on to that one. I folded out a little bit with Carly Ove Knausgaard's My Struggle, as I was moving on to other books, and I got to get back to that. I'm in the middle of book 3. We got to roll into 4 and 5. Those are just fantastic ethereal realms of his reality. It's just, Carl Ove Knausgaard's My Struggle. What a great series. It's his kind of like Proust's remembrance of things past. It's very, very involved in a very detailed way. So, definitely. And so, film-wise, last film I saw was Wise Blood, directed by John Huston in the late 70s, based on a Flannery O'Connor story. And what's great about that, it's not unlike Steven Spielberg's Sugarland Express, where you really get this feel for small-town America and the roads in America, either in the Southwest or in the South. And it's really these neat time capsules from the 70s. So Wise Blood. And what I'm going to think about John Huston, his first film was The Maltese Falcon from 41. And I thought, man, how could this be his first film? It's so precisely made. I mean, I read the Dashiell Hammett novel, The Maltese Falcon, and, a lot of those adaptations are very precise about reiterating the repartee. It's pretty well a direct translation sometimes, that the dialogue is intact, because it's the dialogue that makes this work in such a dynamic form. So yeah, John Huston's Wise Blood from the late 70s. That's definitely a film of interest. So I will move on to Miss O'Connor's story. I'll have to check the shelves for that. I know the last story I read by her was A Good Man is Hard to Find. And also, I watched Dance Party USA and Quiet City by director Aaron Katz. These are from about the mid-2000s. At least Dance Party USA is. It's from 2006. And it is a cross between Wilt Stillman and Larry Clark. So cross between Metropolitan and Kids. Very, very interesting in that sense. That too is will be an important time capsule. And I'm thinking, man, times go by as fast. 2006 was just there, and now it's gone. But our man who filmed his colleagues or whatever has his memories right there. And I'm thinking, damn, where are mine, man? So I got to get on the ball. And it's already being done, so we're going to be good to go. While writing, working on screenplays, doing work for hires, and doing my own, had on the headphones, and just a particular radio station has a particular show, just great rock from the 70s, and so anything from Starcastle to Kansas, and just like, this is good stuff. Nothing torturous about it at all, just heaven itself. It's the Sundance Film Festival. My oldest daughter's out there. She's the box office manager of their theatrical network. So great job, Dawn. And my colleague did an outstanding job for a virtual reality film entitled Battlescar. And it has great publicity out at Sundance. She did a fantastic job with the music, and it shines through it. It's called Battlescar, and it's a virtual reality film. So congratulations all around. Fantastic job. I had a film out there last year, so I went out there and tripped out, and I had all these passes, but I never went to any films. Instead, I went to a couple seminars to work on my screenplays, and that when I'm at festivals, man, last thing I want to do is go to films and sit in the dark when all of the action and your own self-potential awaits in the cafes and the filmmaker lounges and all of that stuff. So it's grueling when people come up to you and say, hey, you got to check out my film. And you're thinking, man, that's like about the last thing I want to do is sit in the dark, man, like still like you're in some experiment or so. It's like, no way, no dice, man. You got to get out there, see the people, do your writing, drink that coffee, etc. But Battlescar, great job. So, nice, man. I could have Gabe on the phone here within, what do you think, Gabe, in about like 2 minutes or so. And the Post, you'll have to check out the Post, and 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. And there's a great article by Wesley Morris in Sunday's New York Times, a kind of like a critical analysis of 3 billboards. And if you've seen the film or are interested in the film, check out Wesley Morris's essay on it in the New York Times. Just it's very interesting, a very interesting counter-analysis to the film. And when I say counter, because it's counter to expectations of, giving it all its glory, but it takes a different angle by a venerated cultural critic, Mr. Morris. So definitely. And what else? Phantom Thread. That's those. I would say what I'm down for the most, definitely the Post, because newsrooms are everything to me. So that's number 1, and number 2 is Phantom Thread. And I usually try to see a decent amount of Best Picture nominees just to be on the scene, just to be in the texture of the zeitgeist, and say, yeah, I saw that, and to get kind of like into that. Into the parlance of the collective, and just to be in it's that nice post-holiday atmosphere where our dreams still reside on forthcoming days, and while we enjoy those days, and actually going to see a film and coming out of the film at both of the theaters where I go, they have tables and that lounge tables, so you just get to work on your journal, your scripts afterward, and so on and so forth. So, all of that said, Gabe Van Handel, this is a call to you. This is alerting you now that we are going to let you on the air. Gabe, my man.
Mark Borchardt.
How are you doing, my man?
Oh, absolutely fantastic. So, in the last 4 weeks, I've been on the show one day. One out of the 4 last shows I was on.
It's a return to form.
Well, yeah, we took off 2 weeks for the holidays, and then we were back for 1 week, and then last week I had to take off. There's other stuff I had to do because Mondays are just a really odd day because it's a guaranteed day that I have off from my job. So there's always there's just life needs to happen on Mondays, and sometimes there's just too much stuff that gets crammed into the Mondays, and occasionally like today there were 3 other things that I had to do right before I came to this, and they're like in these hour blocks. Have to get done, and sometimes I get to the show and I'm just like, I know exactly what I want to talk about. I've begun to keep notes just so I have my mind a little more organized. For years, I didn't keep notes. After the first 2 years, it just became sort of this thing that we do every Monday or every Friday, and then we switched to Mondays. And after a while, I didn't, I was just so ready with the subject that most of the time I didn't need notes. But I've begun keeping journals and notes just related to viewing. Not related to anything else, but just viewing. One is just a list, and that has just the technical, just a look at the technical information, my overt thoughts just on the technical form and the physical form of a film. Its form, just its physical function as a piece of editing, cinematography, music, and I try to keep my opinions out of that, where I just make observations. And then the other journal is a little more of a subjective form, where I look at what's the meaning of this film, what does it mean to me, what is this film about, does this have societal, social, cultural, spiritual relevance, is this a work of art, is this something that's a profound work, is this something that touches me beyond just that this is a form, that this is a piece of film form. So it's interesting to look back at some of these notes later on, and I was listening to an interview I've been listening to a lot of film interviews and a lot of film podcasts lately, which I have not done until recently. It's not, considering that this is a film podcast, it's kind of an odd thing to say, but I guess in some degrees it isn't. It's just not something that I've done a whole lot of, and I've really dove into about 4 or 5 different film historical podcasts, some of which are contemporary and some of which are more classic and diving into stuff in like the 30s, 40s, 50s, and the larger thread of Hollywood in the pop culture sphere. And that has taken me in a lot of directions that, just like any great film text or film journal, you read articles, you read entries, you read reviews of films, and all of a sudden an idea sparks and you see connections, you see links between directors, between actors, and before you know it, you're off to the races. And thanks to the wide cornucopia of being able to, the access to films in various forms, in the multitude of forms is more available than ever. A lot of times I can just, $1.99 on YouTube, and I can rent just about any film that's ever been released by a studio. It doesn't matter if it's a major one or an independent one. So with that being said, later on in the show we'll get to the one of the themes that I was working on, that I've been working on for months, which is Jane Fonda, which was sparked by one of these podcasts I listened to, where
hey dude, guess what? She was just at a gathering in Sundance, speaking there a day or two, Jane Fonda.
Huh. Yeah, Sundance is underway right now, which is super cool.
Yes, and it was snowing.
But it's cool that like I get access without having to always go to the library. I can just like hit a couple of buttons, and all of a sudden, like I can watch on my television, these Blu-ray quality. So, and I don't have to steal, which is a nice thing. I don't have to torrent, or I don't have to, it's not like I download a movie or something like that. It's like the ease of access of renting a film on YouTube or on Amazon or on any of these formats. It's literally the same as going to the video store and renting a movie. You're renting a film. You're giving someone some money. The money goes to the various persons that hold the rights to the film. But one thing I've definitely noticed is that people don't watch classic films. The average person definitely does not watch classic films as much as in the age when we had video stores. Because just the act of browsing has definitely gone down. People don't rent movies, even just the statistical numbers. People don't rent films as much from libraries as they used to, because they have all this wide cornucopia of streaming services available to them. And, a lot of people watch TV shows and miniseries, which is a very fine medium to follow, because we are definitely in a golden age of some of the greatest visual storytelling that's ever been put on, in any medium. And a lot of it is on television. A lot of filmmakers are switching over to TV because they're getting greenlit projects that otherwise, if it was just the network television or just the basic cable, premium cable, network television, Spike Lee, she's got to have it. If you would, the chances that he would have been able to develop that remake of that project in the way and with the expanse and the creative freedom that he had in that project to basically turn it into 5 films instead of just one movie. He gets to expand his vision, and you get to look at the difference between Spike Lee of 30 years ago and the Spike Lee of today. And it's a really interesting study. But at the same time, all that television can be a trap, because most TV shows that are worth watching are essentially like long movies. These miniseries are just like 10-hour movies. They're just as good as any great feature film that come out around the award season. Netflix, HBO, all these streaming services, they just have these huge movies, and they are pouring more money into these shows. So these are not like, we'll do 2 takes, like most TV shows where they just, where it's real economical. With these TV shows, they put as much money into every episode as they would into like a feature film. So the stuff looks incredible. It's got the quality of, David Fincher is doing some of his best work in television right now. Steven Soderbergh is doing some of his best work with on Cinemax. All these great filmmakers are, Steven Spielberg's been doing stuff with HBO for decades, in various forms, war films and other stuff that he's produced. Band of Brothers, The Pacific. Those are as good as any films that he's ever directed himself. So, I try to not get too caught up in those shows, because they're these 10-hour blocks, and at the end of it, you only get to cross one item off of a list, whether it's been an hour and a half or whether it's been 10 hours. It's just one item, one group of characters, one group of artists. And that's 10 hours. That's 8 hours more that you don't get back, that you've devoted to one thing. And while that may be more meaningful, that you do get to, even David Thompson, the world's greatest film critic right now, has said that television is leaving, he's said that television right now is greater than film, that there's better quality storytelling coming out in television and miniseries than there are in films. But that he's talked about the fact that there are, that the time element, for him it doesn't really matter because he's an insomniac. So he doesn't sleep anyway. So he's like, for me, that doesn't matter, because I'm up for, I'll watch 10 movies or I'll watch 2 different series, and it doesn't make any difference to me. But the investment in these characters, he loves it. But I find it a little tiresome that I don't get as wide of a cornucopia. But since the last time I was on, there have been a couple of these 4 movie days where, like, on my day off, I've been on a mission. I'm like, I am going to watch all of the awards films that are out. I am going to watch 4 Jane Fonda films today. I am going to watch these Bela Lugosi, Boris Karloff films, and I've done it.
Congratulations, my man.
It's been good, Mark. I'll tell you, so since the last time I checked in, the Florida, there's all sorts of movies on this list, but I did get to go see 3 Billboards, Den of Thieves.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but did you read the Wesley Morris's take on three?
I did.
You did?
I did. Yeah, there have been a lot of pieces that are similar. I mean, Wesley Morris is one of my favorite writers. He's one of my favorite writers, period. Three Billboards is such an exceptionally well-made and thought-provoking and interesting film that has racism in the borderlines of its film as a template. It's there just as a means to get to deeper issues. The fact that people are being offended by, like, the Mark 1, where the film goes to Mark 5, shows that there's certain issues and words, and instead of talking about the ideas that films can open up and where they can show our links, people are focusing on their divides. And they're really, instead of seeing the humanism that links us, it's like if you say a certain word in a film, whether it starts with, whether it's the other F word or whether it's the N word or whether it's this or that, they hear the word, and because of the history with that word, whether it's their history or the history, it fires off some sort of a red, like an alarm goes off, and they get mad before they think. And then they think after they've gotten mad, and they justify the alarm. Not to say that there isn't some cause for the alarm, but if the whole point in mature, thoughtful films made by adults, where it's the fact that we have to learn to deal with people that say words that we don't agree with. We are going to, at some point, have to learn to not be such toddlers with each other and learn that our opinion is not always absolute and right and the end all. And that's one thing I don't like about Wesley Morris. That's one of the reasons that I get kind of upset about some of the self-righteous essayism, these self-righteous essays that have been coming out more and more by increasingly gifted writers, is the fact that there just is no absolute right or wrong. And Wesley Morris has always, he won the Pulitzer Prize for the very reason that he's always open to the idea of there being a deeper dialogue than what words are capable of eschewing in. But what he gets at recently, especially with some of his more finite pieces and more explicit and topic pieces that he's been writing in the New York Times, is that his outrage, and at times to give him credit, he's been outraged with some of the outragers, like the people that are jumping on bandwagons of anger or bandwagons of causes. But what I feel is that there just is not a real... the humor of the film is completely being misunderstood. I've had several discussions. I've had discussions with three people who saw this film who the conversation always comes down to, between the both of us, like, especially when I find someone who really loves this film as much as I do, are people watching the same movie, or are people just finding another reason to be upset? Are they looking for something to be upset once they get upset in the first 5 minutes? So when the same upsetting alarm-triggering thing happens, instead of looking at the nuance in the film or looking at the beauty or the humanism or the poetry or the art, all they see is what they want to see. They see their own ugliness. And what it is it's saying more about the people that are angry about this film than it's saying anything about the film. The movie is just a movie. It's just some movie that's on the screen. It doesn't mean anything. But what it's really calling out is it's showing that people are able to jump on this bandwagon. It's just a movie. But it has power. Words have power. Art has power. So, but I loved it. I've gone out of my way to see as many of these award season films as possible. I saw Phantom Thread. I saw The Shape of Water.
Congratulations on doing that too, my man.
Yep. I saw The Florida Project. I saw Call Me by Your Name. So I saw all the major ones that I really wanted to, that are essential. And I didn't see The Post, but that's sort of, that's this sort of autopilot Spielberg. I will see it before it leaves the theater. I love Steven Spielberg. He's a filmmaker just like Martin Scorsese, where if you take film seriously and if you followed those films and these filmmakers over the years, you can't miss a movie that they make, no matter which genre it falls into. Like, I see everything that Steven Spielberg makes, even the BFG, which I could have cared less about. I went to go see that in the theater. But what you have here is a group of films that are really on the line between intellectualism and experience, and I would say that the biggest divide is in Three Billboards itself. You have two camps of people that are like split because of this intellectualism getting in the way of their being able to actually see the humanism and just the characters that are on the screen. People are thinking too much. And really, ultimately, what it is, it's that they're thinking too much about themselves. They're not watching the movie. They're watching the movie from their perspective, and the film becomes about them instead of about the movie. Which really, when I've noticed that when people get really upset about this film, they talk about how much the film offends them and how, they end up talking about themselves. And really, did you watch the movie? It's just a movie. But that's not a real popular argument. And, I guess it's fine, but it's just something I've noticed. And so that's one of the films that I'm really hesitant to bring up with people when I've talked about the best films of the year, because that film has sparked the kind of debate that I think he knew it was going to spark. So on that degree, it's a total success. It's a well-written film. It's a mature film. It's hilarious. It's brilliant. It's confrontational. It's about everything that you could expect from a great American film that isn't abstract to be. The filmmaking is not artistic. It's not obtrusive. It's not pretentious. It's about as un-European as you can get. It's a film where the play, the dialogue, the story, the screenplay, that's the point of the film. It's the humanism of the film. The media of the film getting through to the viewer is just sort of a means of telling the story. So it very wisely stands back from having like really distracting camera work or really distracting filmmaking or really showy tricks because really what that often is that's a guise for a lack of meaning, in some cases, not always. But that line between humanism and experience, intellectualism versus experience, I think that's the main difference between Phantom Thread and Lady Bird, is that Lady Bird is a movie about experience. It's a film about life, and it's a film ultimately about silence, too, that there's a lot of the most powerful moments in that film.
Dude,
where no one is.
And I'm sorry, Gabe, for interrupting, but I did see Lady Bird, and afterward, dude, we had the most delicious malts at Ma Fisher's. There was a vanilla and a chocolate, and it was right after Lady Bird, and I want to say thank you, and that was the most delicious malt ever.
Absolutely. But Mark, Phantom Thread, I can't recommend it enough.
I'm down, dude.
I just can't recommend it enough. It's everything that a film of its caliber, a film of its type should be. It really is like the film. It is like the film of films of this year. Lady Bird is the type of film that really invites a commonality between average cinema goers, people that like movies that don't particularly challenge them, movies that don't particularly invoke a larger film sense, and that don't really necessitate a strong attention span. Lady Bird ultimately is extremely rewarding if you pay really close attention to all the nuances of character, all the small gestures in the performances, and all the unspoken moments, even more so than all the dialogue. It's a film of layers upon layers upon layers that on the surface you could call it a coming-of-age teen dramedy. But ultimately, it is so much more than that. It is so much more layered and nuanced. And Phantom Thread, as directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, who is one of the great filmmakers of our time, of any time, is a film that will undoubtedly reward with multiple viewings. To say that either of those films are the best film of the year, whether it's Three Billboards or Lady Bird or Phantom Thread or The Florida Project or Call Me by Your Name, I mean, they all have extreme, strong merit. Call Me by Your Name is probably the one that I would put into the lesser category of those 5 films, just because there's an ease to it. There's a beauty and there's a haunting. There's something really haunted about the film. There's something painful, but there's almost too much camera work. There's too much busyness, which is strange because the film is so calm. The story is so calm that it feels at odds with it, and it feels like there's something a little unnerving and a little anxious, where you can't quite settle in to everything. But it's a brilliant film. It's a masterful movie. It's a great piece of filmmaking. It's a great piece of storytelling. It's a movie about adults for adults, made by adults. Even though one of the main characters is a teenager, it's a thoughtful, mature exercise that, there's not one explosion in the film. There's not one car chase. It's an exquisite film. I don't have enough good things to say about that, but the Phantom Thread is another exercise in Paul Thomas Anderson's grandiose cinema of images, of precision, and of the layers of self-deception that characters are capable of the games that people play with each other, the sadistic and masochistic webs between relationships that characters have in his films, but also the sense of family, that there's as much sadism as there is compassion, understanding, and trust as there is betrayal, hatred, scorn, and misery. P.T. Anderson makes intellectual films that are deeply, deeply tender, heartbreaking, beautiful, boundless. Phantom Thread it's a film that will turn off a lot of viewers, as most of his films are not for a wide audience. But like Stanley Kubrick, he has this ability to web in people, to pull people in, and his almost undoubted genius has caught a more mainstream, for avant-garde cinema, he's definitely achieved a wider amount of acclaim and popularity than most filmmakers of his type and his caliber would ever expect from an American audience in this age or in any age. So he definitely is in one of those high classes of artists in film of his own. There's very few filmmakers that ever achieve the kind of dexterity and precision that his films have, and Phantom Thread is no less than any of his best films. There are so many details in this film that stood out. After a while, I took a notepad into the theater with me, because it's a film that it's like you're going to see a P.T. Anderson movie. It's a film that deserves a notepad, because there's going to be too much stimuli. There's going to be too much to pinpoint what exactly are you looking at. What's the big picture? What's the small picture? What's the immediate? What did I just see? What am I going? There's just layers upon layers of just the obviously the obvious, and then there's the subjective layers of what does this mean. And both change with all of his films. The more you think about his movies, the more complex they become. So ultimately, it's a masterwork that deserves to be revisited and revisited. Its take on relationships and its ultimate thesis, which is what I would sort of say it is, what it reveals itself to be at the end of the film, which might be the closest that P.T. Anderson has ever come to a twist ending. It reveals a sort of sinister but really deeply romantic logic about what relationships really are, especially relationships with artists and romantic relationships with truly passionate, selfish people. People that may or may not have personality disorders and or physiological brain disorders, difficult relationships with truly powerful artists, people that have eyes for visuals and for the ornate. And in some ways, you could kind of infer that this might be almost a statement about himself. But that's, in all the interviews I've heard with P.T. Anderson, he hasn't said anything to that degree. but there seems to be something really intimate about the way that he presents a neurotic, really like overly compulsive perfectionist artist, which it is widely known that P.T. Anderson is beyond a perfectionist on his films, that he is ridiculously meticulous, but it doesn't come at a cost. It comes to his films. If you look at the finished product of other notable perfectionists in films, Wes Anderson, Stanley Kubrick, you see that there's a visual perfection to the final image, and every step along the way requires that kind of constant perfectionism to get what the filmmaker wants and what all the technicians along the way need to get in order for there to be that final product that achieves what all these combined minds together are looking to achieve. And Phantom Thread is absolutely a testament to what those collective minds can achieve together. It's something beguiling, off-putting, at once inviting and extremely ugly. Needless to say, it's not a simple film. It's not an easily digestible film, but it's beautiful on the eyes. It's beautiful on the senses, and it has really, really profoundly powerful things to say about who we are as people and who we are as artists. It continues to grow in my mind the more and the less I think about it, because it's a film definitely about experience. It's a film that requires a lived-in presence. It is not a film for children, in that it's a film that requires a certain amount of understanding of what those types of broken, deceptive relationships are, and what both players in deceptive, really unhealthy relationships are and can be. So definitely it requires a little bit of lived-in experience to really, I think, appreciate it at certain levels. But everyone is going to experience this film differently, because it's not a film that is about plot. It's not a film that's about the mechanics of going from point A to point B, and then the film ends at point C and the mystery was solved, and, you know, everyone smiles and gets on the plane, and you know, the song comes on the soundtrack and everyone flies off into the sunset. That is not P.T. Anderson. So it's definitely up to your own interpretation what the film means.
Are you keeping, you were talking about keeping notes on these films, because I'm looking at all these films that I've seen, these books, I'm thinking, man, if I don't write it down, it dissolves, man. This is becoming a tragedy that must be put a resounding stop to.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends, Mark. I mean, it depends. I usually don't take a notepad into a movie theater. I
mean, like afterward, like this film was about, whether it's just a paragraph synopsis.
Sure. Yeah, I've been doing it lately. I took your advice on that of just writing a synopsis.
I got to take my own advice and get on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do 2 write-ups. I do a technical write-up of just what I've seen and what it kind of looked like and what its features were, and then I do a different write-up on what it meant to me, if it meant anything. So with that being said, Phantom Thread, Call Me by Your Name, 3 Billboards. The Florida Project is another film I can't recommend enough, and I'm just going to leave it at that. It meant a lot to me because I lived in a hotel. The film takes place in a welfare hotel that used to be a tourist hotel in Orlando, Florida. I lived in a rundown hotel turned apartment housing complex, much like the one portrayed in this film, in Florida for 2.5 years. In fact, many of the shows that I called into over those years were out of my room in the hotel that really resembles in so many ways the setting of this film. The Florida Project is another complete success from Sean Baker, who directed Tangerine 3 years ago. And there's just so few films that just absolutely work and entertain and enthrall on a level that the Florida Project does, where it's not a film about it's not a film where there's necessarily things that happen, but there's definitely a very meticulous plotting to the film. But everything seems to unfold in this very natural way that appears to be sort of guided by non-actors or this naturalism. But knowing the process of how the film worked, having listened to several interviews and having read articles about the film, Sean Baker was very meticulous about the way that he put this film together. He had a very sturdy second unit, and I mean, this film was made completely different from how he made Tangerine, which was just basically, like, he shot most of it on an iPhone that was on a rig and just did it the best that he could because he had no money. So now that he had money to make the Florida project, he knew that he had a film that didn't require a ton of money to tell at a base form, but he wanted to infuse it with as much art and professionalism and visual strength as he could. And he doesn't have unnecessary flourishes, but the flourishes and the touches that he does put in there, it adds. It doesn't subtract. It doesn't distract. It's not pointless. It's a film where every minute of the movie feels necessary, even though there's not much that is usually happening. But the fact that it's about children and it's about kids, it brings you into the perspective that things are really important when you're a kid. There isn't this sense of, like, when you get older, of there being passing time, or of there being boredom, or of there just being another day. You really are webbed into this world of children, especially aimless children. Having lived in an environment very similar to what this film portrays, the amount of realism that this film has, and candid, powerful, loving realism for the type of people that live in these types of projects, the majority of the types of people that live in these housing projects in Florida, it's a fantastic achievement, and it's a great film. It's a profound work of art. And at the same time, it's just a really steady, sturdy entertainment. I can't recommend it enough. It's not gonna change your view of cinema. It's nothing like the films of the new wave, of the American new wave, or the French new wave. I've said this on the show before. Even the greatest films that come out nowadays, in many ways, there's even bad films that have come out 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 60 years ago, that I feel like I gain more from watching those than I do from what I would consider the best films of today. It's not to say that films are so bad or that they're meaningless today, but I feel that there was just a sense of urgency in films that something changed about 30 years ago, and something has continually changed. And I just don't feel the same type of presence in contemporary films as I do for older films. So, well, it's just the way I feel.
Yeah, I think it's the last 121 years have been completely relative to each other, and I think each day is a new day. It's not to be a contrarian, because I value your insights to the nth degree, undoubtedly. I just never see it like that. That we as people are always doing outstanding work, just like you do, just like I do, et cetera, which also equally reflects what's on screen, et cetera, and all of that stuff. But I will say this, man, listening to you, it's like, Roosevelt's fireside chat. It's so embracing and informative. So I really enjoy that.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
While I look up Ingmar Bergman books, noted.
Mark, I just can't wait to hear your take on these, because your take is really unpredictable. I never can quite know what to expect from your take, because there's certain films that I think, Mark will really love the filmmaking in this, or the camera work, or the screenplay, the mechanisms, or the flow, the emotional content. And, usually you bring something that I would never expect you to notice, and you take something in that I would have never noticed was there, and that's like this big thread that you see through the film. So I always, and the things that you dismiss about movies, like, this is just this, and it's like, well, after you point a lot of this stuff out, it's like it just gives me a new light on the power, or sometimes on the lack of power, just the pretense of a film. Because sometimes, after months or years go by, even days, the initial seeming power of a film can sometimes fade. You revisit a film, and sometimes you just, oh man, I must have been eating a lot of sugar that day, and I just thought I was, watching this great film or something like that, or I had this really moving experience that ultimately the film that's left, like revisiting it or thinking about it later, it's like, oh man, maybe this movie doesn't add up to much more than a bag of popcorn, really. So I really appreciated your insight about Lady Bird the other week, because I have to agree, it's like, it's when people have talked about, oh, it's the best film of the year, and it's just this profound work of art, and it's the best film I've seen in years. I have to agree, it is one of the best films I've seen this year, if not the best in some ways. But mostly, I'm looking at it from the side, like enjoying a game of football, like getting this close-up look at like a game of football. But after the game of football is over, I'm not thinking, oh, that was the best game of football I've ever seen. I'm thinking it was a good season. Or, man, the Chiefs did really good this year, the Packers did really good this year, but there's other sports, and there's other teams, and there's other leagues, and there's other, it's just football, and it's just sports, and it's just leagues. But, I'm passionate about films. I love films. I think about films a lot. I spend a lot of time watching them, and I spend a lot of time writing about them, and I spend a lot of time talking and thinking about them. And it's a strange thing to have these moments where, like, there'll be weeks at a time where I'm really dismissive of the power of films, or I'm just like, I don't know if that's coming more from the fact that I've spent so many hours of my life watching films that at this point they just don't have as much impact as they used to. My passion for them is starting to wane to some degree, or I'm just, sometimes there's only so many films you can watch in 1 week before your enthusiasm for an individual film can have that, like, where you recharge your battery and you go into it with the expectations, the hopes, and the, like that allure where you don't want to be disappointed, and if you are, it's like, oh, it's like heartbreaking. I just really don't have that as much as I used to, because there's some, like I said, there's some weeks where I watch lately. I mean, I watched 4 movies on my day off last week. I watched another 3 on this other day. I've been really ramping up for this Jane Fonda stuff, which I don't think we're going to get time to do today.
I dare say.
My advice to people is don't watch too many movies. Which I'm it's like how you say, Mark, like you got to take your own advice and get back to writing. These intro.
Well, yeah, and the reason being, it's not for the sake of the film; it's for the sake of the dream that is my life, dude. Yeah. It's like, man, all of that stuff. It's like I don't even have a grip on, and that's got to be rectified, my man.
Yeah, you're right, Mark. I mean, it's really important to write. It's good to take the time to. It's like it's a distance and it's an intimacy at the same time, and that's why journals are so important. It's a form of therapy. It's a form of recollection, and it's a form of synthesis where you get to really look at what's the meaning of this, even if it's just a day, a boring day. What does that boring day mean? Why is that day boring? Nothing's boring.
Never had one. I wouldn't know, so I won't be able to put anything on that page.
Well, but it's relative. It's like saying every day of my life is super exciting. Like, I might want to say that because I would hate to think that my life isn't super exciting. It is. Like, I think my life is super exciting because I love what I do, but I don't have to say it's my life super exciting because I think it's not. I mean, it's just really not compared to, like, the lives of the people that I would, I mean, when I think about, oh, God, like some of my favorite writers or some of the great film critics.
Well, what do you do? They're at a desk writing. Where's the excitement in that?
Well,
it's an interior, my man. It's an interior excitement, just like what you're experiencing.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, to someone else, they might think that my life is incredibly exciting because of my enthusiasm, my passion, my vigor. The amount of time, the amount of energy that I give and that I get from it. People tell me this all the time. Not all the time, but once in a while they're like, man, I wish I looked at things that way. I wish I did things that way. I wish I did that. And I think to myself, I don't tell them this. I'm like, no, you don't. Like, No, you don't. You know, like it's a blessing and a curse to have certain types of habits, certain types of things you love to do. I wouldn't wish my love of movies upon anyone because it's consuming. I'm passionate about films, and I'm passionate about what I've gotten out of films, and I'm passionate about what I can share about those movies with other people. And I love having great conversations with non-film people about films because you can turn people on to movies that they would have never checked out in a million years. And you get those recurring conversations with people. You build friendships. You build that rapport. People will come. I mean, I've had people that I work with come back and, I've recommended some Jane Fonda films to a few friends of mine. And I had one friend who came back and watched They Shoot Horses, Don't They? And he would have never seen that film. He had never heard of it before. He would have never watched that. I pulled that movie out of the 10 Jane Fonda films that I watched for the show. That would have, in all likelihood, been the least likely film that I could have picked that would have suited his taste. If anything, like The China Syndrome or...
Great film.
Absolutely.
And Jack Lemmon
yes.
as well.
Absolutely. Something more in like an action thriller type of vein. Even Coming Home, The China Syndrome.
John Voight, right?
Yep.
Am I correct?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So, anything, but I recommended They Shoot Horses, Don't They, from 1969, which is a very strange, very beguiling, very harsh piece of, to say it's an experimental film. Visually it's shot in a sort of traditional American film way, but its subject matter is very unsettling.
Which reminds me of Electric Horseman, is that correct? Is that what Jane Fonda?
Yes, that's another film that I watched, which is actually, it's a very good film it has a strange reputation.
Rollover.
Yeah, it's a good film. It's a really interesting film about morals and ethics and choices.
Have you seen Rollover?
I have not.
Yeah, I actually, and this is all from my mind. I'm not looking at anything when it's whatever's popping up. But yeah, I've copied somewhere of Rollover. That's an interesting film. So I think that's with Chris Christopherson, I think, in the financial world. That's a film about intrigue and sex and the lure of money and sex and power in the banking world. And I believe that was made in the early 80s. And that is a film that's its cover pulls me in as much, Jane Fonda is just a very alluring, very mysterious, and very interesting pop culture figure. On the one hand, she's extremely predictable and silly and sort of stupid. And on the other hand, she's extremely noble and brilliant, and just I really admire her on the one hand, and I also think she's just extremely kind of pathetic on the other hand. Okay, so that's a nosedive.
Well, the more research that I've read 2 books on her since I started researching her. I read her autobiography, My Life So Far, which came out to great acclaim in 2005.
Actually, I was falling asleep listening to that on audio CD from the library.
It's great. It's a very interesting book because her account of her life, like what I was saying, where it's like parts of her life I find extremely cringeworthy, and other parts of it are just I find very honorable and very and the different forms of patriotism. Just if you look at her career as a pop culture figure, as a political pop culture figure, there are these times where I find her very noble and very empowering, and I agree with her politics. And then there are these other times when I just think she sounds like a foolish child. And she is the first to admit that in many cases in her book, and the other accounts of her. Oftentimes, when you get into more varied accounts of her life, where they look at the full picture of where she's been, where she came from, and also if you look at her talent, the fact that she was on Broadway at an extremely young age. She's Henry Fonda's daughter. She came up under Henry Fonda as one of the great American humanist actors, and she wanted to become an actor to follow in her father's footsteps. And ultimately, a big problem in her life is that she was searching for her father's and her parents' love and acceptance, and she never really quite got that. And the further that she got into her causes, the harder it was for her to find that acceptance and that love. But her career as an actress is varied too, because on the one hand, she did these very challenging and very profoundly moving films where the subject of the film is powerful and moving, or where her performance is powerful and moving. But then on the other hand, she made these really silly, fluffy films too. And there are films where she's just plain bad. And just the reasons that you can account to why her performances vary so much can be accounted, a lot of it, to her bulimia. She was very malnourished for many years. And she is the first to admit that her brain, the fact that she was taking in, she was drinking more and more over certain sets of years to deal with the marriage divorce, this sort of success failure ratio that was always coming up and down, both in terms of her relationship to fame, her relationship to the public, her relationship to her husband, her relationship to herself, and her image, her physical image as a woman and as a sex object has much to do with that. So the Jane Fonda workout video is really an important part of the Jane Fonda career as a whole, because as much as it's, this silly thing in the 80s where it's the highest selling VHS tape of all time, it's almost, if you can point to a single thing that is maybe the 80s, that is like 1980, 1983 and 1984.
Yeah. Victoria Principal had one tape too, so from Dallas. And and Gabe, even though your enthusiasm remains unbridled, and unfortunately the act of time does not. It has its concrete peripheral boundaries, and I'm looking at the opposite station. The next radio show host is just kind of quietly sitting there like he's in a Rembrandt painting and lost in his contemplative realm. It's quite striking. That said, Gabe, I really wholeheartedly want to thank you for all of the passion and education you have brought to this hour of Cinema Fireside. And you know darn well this is my earnest attempt to wrap things up. Absolutely, Mark. Next week, I hope to be back with, I'm finishing up some research on Val Lewton and Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, some of their other stuff, not the stuff that that we've come to know them as, but I'm hoping to find some more fringe films and other films of noteworthy praise that are less talked about and less seen. For sure. So that's cool stuff. Cat People, Curse of the Cat People, The Black Cat, and some of the other stuff that Karloff and Lugosi were in over the years that are not quite as famous as Dracula and Frankenstein. Well, we certainly look forward to that, Gabe. And again, I'm going to have to reiterate our closing sentiment. Thank you so very much, Gabe, and have a great night. Thank you, Mark. Thanks again, everyone. All right, we'll see you all sometime soon. Thank you. Okay, I got to watch that clock. We're down to 15 seconds now. And so thanks, listeners, for listening to Cinema Fireside. Be strong. You have only one life to live. I'd be rolling with that self-potential like you wouldn't believe, man, because once it's over, it's over. We will be on at the same time next week on WXRWLP 104.1 FM Milwaukee. To hear past episodes, visit riverwestradio.com/shows and click Cinema Fireside.